Before we go on to the interview, we at the IPS Project would like to share an exciting announcement. For anyone who's interested, the IPS Project now has a premium membership. With the premium membership, you will get access to all the online courses on the IPS Academy for one single price of $6.99 a month. But there's more. With a premium membership, you will also get a 15% discount on any IPS t-shirts, which are t-shirts that change the world, and a 15% discount on any IPS journey, which are mindful travel trips, workshops, and events. Your premium membership also lets you listen to over 100 articles on the IPS Project in audio format while on the go. You will likewise gain access to premium content, including special Q&As with instructors at the IPS Academy and other guests who have appeared on our previous podcasts, and you can even decide what the questions are going to be. If any of this has sparked your interest, you can find more information about it by going to innerpicturestories.com/premium, or you can also find a link located in the description of this episode. Finally, besides all these benefits that you will get for $6.99 a month, you will also be supporting the IPS Project to help it continue in its mission of providing education about life and release podcast episodes like this one. So if you do consider a subscription, thank you sincerely. It really helps us a lot. Again, you can find more info by going to innerpicturestories.com/premium or just click on the link located in the description of this episode. Having said that, let us go on now to the interview. Welcome to the Inner Picture Stories podcast. My name is Jellis Vaas, your host and the founder of Inner Picture Stories, the educational platform on life. I hereby invite you to come on a journey with me. In each episode, we will dive into the life of an inspiring person seeking lessons of wisdom about life and the world we live in. Answers that you can take away and use in your own life. It's true that no one ever said life would be easy, but it's also true that no one ever said you had to do it alone. So get ready and let the journey begin.
A lot of us are quite able to be in compassion towards other people, but when it comes to ourselves, we are totally lost. And the way we are talking to ourselves, we are actually quite harsh and unkind. And we wouldn't talk to other people the way we talk to ourselves. So it's very critical to start noticing that voice and maybe in a kind manner, asking it to shut up.
This is episode 027 with licensed psychologist Signe Hegestand. A warm welcome everyone to another episode of the IPS podcast. As always, it is a real pleasure to have you here, especially on episodes like this one, which are not easy topics to talk about or listen to, yet extremely important. In this episode, I have invited Signe Hegestand, a licensed psychologist from Denmark, to talk about emotional abuse. A topic she has specialized in, having helped hundreds and hundreds of people struggling with emotional abuse over the years. In 2019, she delivered an incredible TEDx talk titled Psychological Abuse, Caught in Harmful Relationships, that I could highly recommend checking out. And in April 2021, so just a few days ago, she released her book Psychological Abuse, How to Move On, which has been translated from Danish to English. I will provide some more info about her book in a second. This episode covers what I would say a perfect foundation and beginning for understanding emotional abuse and doing something about it for those who might be in an emotionally abusive relationship or who know of someone who is in such a relationship. You will learn a great deal about what emotional abuse is, the signs that someone is emotionally abusing you or someone else, what motivates abusers or why they abuse someone, the first steps in how to get out of an abusive relationship, and how to start healing from emotional abuse. Afterwards, I highly recommend you check out the book Signe wrote, Psychological Abuse, How to Move On, as It's an in-depth, step-by-step guide on understanding psychological abuse and moving past it. Emotional abuse is complex, to say the least, and while a lot is covered in this episode, there is a whole lot more that the book goes into that is impossible to touch on in 1 hour. In the book, Signe explains emotional abuse and how to work through it using her own personal experience of being in an emotionally abusive relationship for more than 23 years and from the many clients she has helped in her practice as a psychologist. The true danger with psychological abuse is the fact that you cannot see it. Whereas physical abuse leaves bruises and clear marks, the bruised and blackened heart caused by emotional abuse can easily slip past us or not be taken seriously by others. Therefore, whether you are here because you yourself are a victim or have been a victim of emotional abuse, or if you're here simply because you would like to educate yourself on this topic, I deeply appreciate that you're here. As always, you'll find all the recommendations mentioned in the episodes, including Signe's book, her TEDx talk, and ways to connect with Signe in the show notes, which are in the description of this episode. Or you can also find it by going directly to innerpicturestories.com/podcast and search for Signe. And Signe is spelled Signe. With that, please enjoy this meaningful conversation about a topic that we need to talk a lot more about: emotional abuse, with licensed psychologist Signe Hegestand. Signe, a warm welcome here to the IPS podcast. It's so good to finally have you here on the show.
Oh, thank you so very much. It's an honor to be here. So I've been looking forward to it.
So I'm honestly so grateful that you're here to talk about a topic that is easily overlooked or taken less serious by other people, yet that could completely break someone and can leave such deep wounds, namely emotional abuse. Now, with topics like this, I always like to gradually build the interview up. Therefore, I like to start off with a very simple yet important question to clearly know and understand at the start of this interview. Signe, could you tell us what exactly emotional or psychological abuse is? And as well with that, what are the signs that someone is emotionally abusive to you?
Well, I don't know how it is in the rest of the world, but in Denmark, it's a fairly new topic in psychology. It has been there for ages. It probably have been there for the beginning of mankind, but it's just until recently that we have started to take interest in this area. And what we are working on right now, the definition that we are working on is that it is a repeating pattern on where you are devaluating or mocking or shaming, for example, your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your children, for that sake. So it's a degrading behavior. And it's sort of it's a constant pattern. It's not just something that happens once in a quarrel or twice, but it's something that is repeatedly happening in the relationship. And it's often about sort of, there can also be a lot of behavior like controlling, and that can be from your sort of interacting with other people, but it can also be in your clothes and your whereabouts and checking your cell phone and computer. And so there's a lot of different kinds of behavior, but the main sort of the key thing about this is it's about control and it's about power. So that's what it is about. And what we see that when people have this kind of behavior, it's like that they have some difficulties in sort of perceiving how their behavior is affecting the other person. So I don't know if that answers your questions or if you need some more about it.
No, it does. So I'm curious to ask, and we can always move onwards to the next question if you don't feel comfortable talking about it. But what led you to being so interested in this topic and specialize in it?
Well, it's okay for me to talk about it because it's all there in my book.
Yeah.
So, well, it came from my own experiences, and I have been in a marriage for nearly 2 decades, and I really didn't understood what was going on. And finally, I broke out, and it actually it got worse. And I was totally confused, and I really didn't understood what was going on because I thought I was in a love relationship. So there were action and things going on which didn't fit into that story. If you think that you are in a love relationship, and then I started to well, my curiosity was woken up, and then I started to sort of do a lot of research, and it also happened like that in my clinic. I started to have a lot of clients coming in telling me similar stories, and I really were puzzled. And then this journey began, and it has been a lot of soul searching in myself, because my search kept on pointing back to myself, not to victimize me or to blaming myself, but I truly believe that if you have to move on from this kind of relationship, you have to stop really concentrating about the other part, but start looking at yourself, and where do you need to grow, where do you need to get some new knowledge or be able to do something new. So that is where all this came from, and then it also became quite clear to me that this is a topic that is so full of shame and guilt, and also, as you said yourself, there's a lot of people don't know what this is. And if we can't sort of recognize it, how do we know what we are sort of in? So I wanted to start to communicate so that people could resonate and understand it. I wanted to share my experiences and a lot of my clients' experience so that they could have the descriptions that they could recognize. So I wanted to describe it from the inside, and also using all my psychological knowledge, so I could make this kind of sort of bubble where you could tap into, and oh, this is me, and this is what I recognize. And it has been sort of a choice, and some would say a bold choice, but it came from a very heartfelt motivation of trying to describe this and starting to speak out loud about it, because this is a huge problem, not just in Denmark, but all over the world, and not just for women. Let me understand that this is something that is happening in relationships. So I wanted us to talk about that, to hopefully become better partners and better parents and a lot of other things, but in the hope that to create awareness, because that for me is the best starting point.
Yeah, and it's very much appreciated that you're actually sharing this out there, and thank you as well for sharing it here right now. So I wanted to ask that question because there's also a follow-up question to it, and while it's likely to a degree different for everyone, having experienced emotional abuse in your own life, how would you best describe what it feels like to be in an emotionally abusive relationship? So what emotions and thoughts primarily dominated you during those years?
Well, there is some key experiences. And some of the experiences are that you are starting doubting yourself, and you also will become confused. And the sort of the key description is losing yourself. This is a graduating process where your boundaries are crossed again and again. And very slowly, this is a process where you actually lose yourself as a person. You get confused about, is my experiences right? Are my feelings right? What is going on in this relationship? Do I perceive it right? And a lot of the women I've been working with, they also describe, and I can recognize that you will become very isolated, and people will also become, for example, physically sick.
Yep.
You can start to having pains around your body. You can have digestions problems. You can also have a lot of mental symptoms like anxiety, depression, and stress. And some also will develop complex PTSD. And so this is sort of a process where you, as a human being, is so devaluated that you actually sort of is erased. You get invisible in a way, and you also lose sort of the feeling of yourself. What am I? What do I stand for? What are my goals? What are my needs? Because you will eventually start to have all your focus on your partner. What can I do to please him? What can I do to avoid conflicts? And in a way, you put all your focus on him and try to sort of you use the description walking on eggshells, because you never know when the next explosion will come, and you don't know what will make it explode. Even though you try to do all the things that you have been asked to, then something else is wrong. So it's also a way where your self-esteem is totally broken down.
I'm so surprised actually that you said in the beginning that it's only been recently recognized in Denmark, because it just seems like Denmark, and it might just be a feeling that Denmark would be kind of more aware of this.
Well, we are not, and it is actually having a hard time being recognized in Denmark. And also one of the problem is that a lot of people, even the Danes, actually look at their country where there is a lot of equality also between the genders, and that is actually not the truth. But as I also express it in my TEDx, this is a difficult field because it doesn't leave any bruises. So what is the evidence? How do you prove that your spouses has totally broken you down? And sometimes it's quite clear that you have been called different kinds of names and being yelled at and things like that. But others do other tactics, like being silent, and you can have that what we call silent treatment for days. And how that is a very powerful way to control other people. If you're just silent and you are living together, that will affect you as a person very deeply. So, and also it can just be a look of dissatisfaction. So it is very difficult. And sometimes the communication between the partners is there is a lot of subtle undertones that really from the outside can be very difficult to be aware of. It does create a lot of complex cases in courts, and about sort of in divorces and cases about child custody and things like that. And in Denmark right now, the tendency is that, it's just women. They will always say things like that. It's not true, even though they have been sort of going on, been fleeing from their houses and been living in sheltered houses and things like that. I'm trying to sort of put some more awareness in this also as a society, because we need to recognize it, because it is creating some very difficult cases. But we are seeing the tip of the iceberg, but hopefully one day we will see it more clearly.
Yeah, and the huge problem is, like you said, you just can't see it from the outside. So
No.
Yeah. So before I'm going to ask you some specific questions about what to do if you're in an emotional abusive relationship, I also wanted to take some time to understand the other person, the one who is emotionally abusing someone, and not to justify their actions, but rather to understand their behavior better. And as well, maybe if someone is listening who might recognize some of this behavior in themselves, to do something about it. What is often the goal from people who emotionally abuse someone? And what are the primary drives why they do this?
Well, in my experiences, there are a range. You can see this like sort of on a continuum. So there are some where we would say, okay, we are dealing with people who have personality disorders.
Mm-hmm.
That could be the case, but I would also argue that is not always the case. But what we see in this kind of behavior is that this is a person where control is sort of the key to them, to be in control and to control their environment. So sometimes that could also come where if you are in a relationship and you are actually becoming overwhelmed with emotions, which we can see in people who are avoidant attached, they will have difficulties in being with their own emotions, but also in their partner's emotions. So when something comes up with a high emotional sort of strength, they will put all their energy into closing it down or to move away from it, because they can actually not handle it, because they actually will get a lot of anxiety in this situation. And for them, even though it may sound a little strange, but their goal is also to keep their partner. They will also have a fear of being alone or being left. So all this can also be because they really want to assure that their partner is not leaving them, even though their behavior and strategies are in some cases very extreme. And then, of course, there will be cases, if we are talking about people with a personality disorder, then it will be just for their own sort of gain, that the other person is sort of like their, what you call that? Just a moment.
Yeah, they're
filling them up. Yeah, but also they are sort of like an object that
right.
They maybe it's a beautiful woman and it looks good on them that they have this nice woman, but they are not really interested in the woman as a person. So she's like an object that they can put on and leave behind when they don't need her anymore,
right?
Or they move on to the next object. So that is definitely also something you see. And then you can also see, and now I really hope that the male listeners will bear with me. There is also a cultural thing in this, that in some cultures, men still feel entitled. They still feel that women are their possession. This is my wife and she's my woman and I possessed her and she is sort of something like my house and my car, and her job is to please me, and her job is to take care of me. And even though we are in 2021, there are still in some countries and in some subcultures and some male that are still brought up with this feeling of entitlement towards women. So there's also a cultural thing in this matter, where there is not an equality between the sexes. So that is also a part of it. But a lot of what I feel is that it can also be a highly emotional, immature person or man who is doing this kind of behavior, where it's their way to sort of cope. It's a coping strategy. If I get in control, then I feel secure.
So I'm very curious to ask you this question, and I could imagine this to be a difficult question to answer, but what if you're listening and you might recognize this behavior in yourself, that you emotionally abuse someone? Do you have any actionable steps, Signe, for this person to start breaking free from this behavior?
There is not one clear answer, but I would say if you have a personality disorder, you will definitely, or maybe not, recognize that you are having this kind of behavior because you are not the problem. Then it's the other part who is the problem. So why do you shouldn't bother. But if let's say that you maybe are a little emotional immature, or you have an avoidant attachment style, where you can recognize that when your partner tries to talk to you about a certain problem and you feel the urge to run away because, oh, I can't be in this situation, or then you could start. There's a lot of things on the internet about avoidance attachment style and how they behave in relationships, and how can they start to work on their own inside. What has caused them to have this strategy, even though it's not something that we choose by sort of a conscious choice. It's something that has developed in us through our own upbringing. But to see how do I manage in conflicts? How do I handle my own emotions, and how do I handle other people's emotions? And how am I listening? Because a lot of these people will have a strategy where they will if you try to tell them about something that you are experiencing, they will close it down, say that's not true. They will start to arguing about, is it true or not? And that is not something that you always can sort of agree about. Sometimes we just have experiences, but can I listen to my partner or my child, for example? What is my partner trying to tell me? And not trying to fixing it or doing anything about it, but just like when we're talking in therapy, just containing it. I'm holding space for my partner right now. But I would say that if you have the sort of feeling that I may be psychologically abusing my partner, I would ask for help. I don't know how it is out in the world, but I know in Denmark we actually do have organizations that having the ability where you can contact them and getting help with this kind of abuse, also physical abuse. So how can I to help myself and getting trained into having new coping strategies, because that's often what it is about. How can I soothe myself? How can I try to connect with my emotions and calming myself down when I'm under pressure? But I would say that often you would have to have some professional help.
Yep. So that's some really good advice, actually. Yeah. So let's turn the tables and let me ask you some questions now about what to do if you've been or currently are in an emotional abusive relationship. To someone who's listening right now and, from everything you have shared so far, recognizes him or herself to be in such a relationship. And it's probably also more complex, but what are in general the most effective strategies that they can take to break out of such a relationship?
I would say first thing is to get a lot of knowledge, to sort of know what am I, which situation am I in? Because this, in some areas, and I'm not saying this to scare somebody, but this is also actually a very dangerous field. And we know from in Denmark, every year women are being killed by their spouses because of this. So there is a risk a situation here when you are trying to get out of the relationship. So according to how violent it is, and in some cases there will also be physical violence, and that's sort of the step before maybe crimes. So what I would say is try to sort of get an overview of your situation. Then find somebody or an organization where you can get some advice. How can you is there places where you can go to? Here in Denmark, you can actually move out from your house. I don't know what it's called in English, but it's like a emergency center where women and their children can move into for a period of time if they are in these kind of situations. And they will often have a lot of advisors that can also help you to sort of, how is the situation? Is it here and now you need to leave, or can we make a plan? Because in some cases, you also need to see that if you leave this situation, you will be prepared or must be prepared not to go back. So what do you need to bring with you? What are the essentials? But also try to find somebody that you can trust, somebody that can help you, and try to sort of often there can be a lot of practical things, but sometimes it can also be a lot more smooth, and you can just file for a divorce. But what we often see in these cases, that when you file for the divorce, it will explode. A lot of court cases will be long and with a high level of conflicts. So that is also something you need to prepare yourself for. And that is sometimes something that is what is the word, that you think, okay, I'm leaving him, and then it's over, and then you just will wake up to a nightmare that this even became worse than when you lived together. So depending on how extreme the situation is, it's vital to get help. Maybe from a friend, maybe from a family member, but to get help, because you will need it. It's like getting into a battlefield. It can be. But you can also be, I will put this in a situation, what you call it, as a quote.
Yeah.
You can also be so lucky that you are being left. And then it's a whole other story. But then you don't often have this kind of battle. But it's very crucial that you start to acknowledge, what is this that I'm participating in? And what do I need to learn? A lot of the women I've been working with, and I can recognize it from myself, we have boundary issues. And we have had them before we came into this relationship. So that is why I'm also so interested about our upbringing, because boundaries is very crucial. It's defining ourselves. And if we have problems here, we are sure to have a lot of more problems in this kind of relationship, because that is also what is happening all the time, that our boundaries are consisting being crossed. And we, at some point, are not able to put them down at any case. And we're also starting to question, am I allowed to put boundaries down? Can I say no? Is that okay? So I would say that help is vital. And I would say also that there is a lot of national awareness. So you can Google this and there will be a lot of information out there.
Yeah.
And all sort of the signs and what to be aware of. But to know that it would be a great help to have somebody to help you in this case.
Mm-hmm. A piece of advice that I found that you also shared was that you should remove yourself from this person in your life who is emotionally abusing you. But what if it is one of your parents or, your husband or wife who is playing mind games? It's another bridge to burn if that is the case. And I know that in the end, people only change if they want to change themselves. But is there any way to make the other person understand what they're doing to you? And if so, how? Or how would such a conversation look like, if it's even possible?
Well, I would say that a lot of people that I've been working with is what is actually doing this so difficult to coming out of this kind of relationship, because you want them to understand, you want to explain, you want them to see it from your point of view. Mm-hmm. And you can for ages try to understand it. And you will never get that kind of closure. Not if you're talking to a person who have problems or lacking empathy.
Yeah.
So what I'm often saying to my clients, stop doing that, because you're using a lot of energy on trying to get this kind of closure and getting this, oh, now he understood me. Now we can go back to the good side or part of our relationship. And sometimes you will get the experience that, he did understood me. And sometimes this period will last for an hour, sometimes for a week, sometimes for a longer period. And then you come right back to the abusive part. So that is also what is so confusing in these kind of relationships, that you can have, it's not all bad. There's also something very good and nice. And a lot of people will tell you that this relationship started up like a joyride. Mm-hmm. and it was very intense, and they felt like they have met their soul partner, and they want that part back. And that is what they are fighting for. And that is why people are staying, because they are hoping that they can have only that part. But you need to see that is not what is going on in this kind of relationship. There is something that has been good, or maybe in periods are good, but often it will become lesser and lesser. And then there's another side, which is abusive. It's degrading, it's devaluating, it's scorning, and it is breaking you down. And it is not two different kinds of people. It's the same person who is doing this. And you need to see the whole picture of the person. And then you must sort of calculate, can I, is this good enough for me? Can I live with this balance? And if I can't, I must take the responsibility for myself, and maybe also for children. Say, this is not healthy. This is breaking me down. And maybe it's also breaking the children down. So I need to remove myself. And then when you want to sort of have that kind of conversation where you're hoping that they will understand you, that is where you jump right back into the dance again, which I call it. It is a kind of a dance, and you know all the moves because you've been there for so many years maybe, and you need to stop dancing and you need to do some other movements, because you will never often get that conversation where he will say, oh, now I understand it. Not if you are having to do with a person where there is some signs of disorder. But maybe if you're having a partner who has a more avoidant attachment style, I would seek counseling. There is a lot of counselors who's working on this, we call it emotional focused therapy. And I find that could be a way, but you need to have your partner aboard the ship. You can't go on that journey alone. You need to be two on the ship, and you need to sort of steer it together with a wish of having another kind of relationship. And I would strongly recommend Sue Johnson's book, Hold Me Tight, because that is one of the most wonderful books about relationships and partnerships. And the way she describes some of the dynamics between partners and how we end up in these conflicts constantly, but we don't have the conversation of what it is about underneath, because maybe underneath it's I'm anxious that you will leave me, or I don't feel good enough, because we don't have these kind of conversations, and there's a lot of reasons why we are not brought up to actually communicate on that level. But it would be vital for a lot of relationship that we start to communicate in a much more vulnerable matter and dare to go into these kind of conversation. Because if your partner tell me, oh, but right now I'm so anxious that you will leave me, so that is why I'm starting actually to yell, oh, okay, if that's what it's about, but I'm not leaving, darling, sit down and let me hear about it. It would be a totally different kind of conversation and connection between the couples. But so that's what Sue Johnson is describing in her book, and that is one of the best books I've ever read about this kind of working with couples. So I would strongly recommend that.
Could you say one more time the title of the book?
Hold Me Tight.
Yeah.
Sue Johnson.
So for everyone listening, I will link that up in the show notes.
Yeah, please do.
Signe, a last question here before I like to move onwards to the final part of this interview. Mm-hmm. In the incredible TEDx talk you did in 2019 titled Psychological Abuse Caught in Harmful Relationships, which for everyone listening will also be linked up in the show notes, you talked about the attachment style theory, and you already shared a little bit about it here too. But could you talk a bit about that here, and what is the attachment style theory, and what should listeners who are in an emotionally abusive relationship know about it?
Yeah, the theory about attachment style is a very strong theory about that when we come into this world, we are always in relationships. So from us, for example, already when we are lying in our mother's womb, we are in a kind of relationship, and we are connected. And it's a vital strategy for human beings to connect, because we are born the way we are. We are not finished at all. So we are the only way to survive is that we are connecting. So that is what we come into this world with, a skill to connect. But we have to connect with somebody. And so this is our mother or father or other caregivers. And in that interaction, we very early on, from the very beginning, we will get some experiences of what is going on in this relationship. And some of us will have some experiences where our parents were not always able to connect with us, or sometimes they could, and sometimes there were very little connection or a very bad connection. So this will develop this what we call inner working model. So in each of us, we will have some models about how it is to be in relationships, and we will also have learned something about ourselves, our perceptions of ourselves, through this interaction with our caregivers. And it will sort of create the fundament of our creations of self. So we are talking, there are some sort of different kind of attachment styles, but the clue is that you can be secure attached, and that will mean that your parents, to a degree, have been able to see you, hear you, and being able to sort of figure out what your needs were. Oh, you were hungry. Oh, you were tired. Oh, you needed to be soothed or being held or whatever. And then we also talking about being unsecured attached, which means that we will have experiences where our parents were not able to sort of see us or listen to us or to figure out what our needs were, because we are not capable ourselves, because we don't have any language, and our brain is not developed well enough to sort of figure it out ourselves. We need another person to mirror us, to figuring out, oh, what you are expressing now, it's this is what you need. And then we can start to figure it out. Oh, this is what I needed, because my mother has told me what it is, and there were a match or a fit. So it has some consequences where when our parents, for example, if you're brought up with a mother who has depression and her facial expressions are very sort of still, that will create a lot of anxiety in the child, because they will try to get a connection and they will try to have sort of get a reaction from the mother. But because the mother is, for example, depressed, there will be very lack of facial expressions. And the child will try again and again to get a reaction, but will not succeed. And if you look at small children, they will try again and again, and they will get very disturbed about this. And hopefully the mother will react then. But if she keeps on not reacting, the child would at least give up. And maybe the child will have then learned, oh, I can't get any help. I need to get by myself. I will attract myself from the world and will try to avoid connecting with other people, because that's too harmful or too hurtful, and it was too painful where I couldn't get the connection. And then you can also have the other experience where sometimes I could get connections with my mother if I did something that she appreciated or she felt helpful. And then then you will get what we call a conditioned love. I was loved when I did something that my mother appreciated or my father was proud about or whatever.
Interesting.
Yeah. So then you will have a inner working pattern. Oh, when I need love, I need to do certain things. It's not just because I am what I am, which is the experience you will have when you're secure attached. I'm loved because I am me, not for something that I'm doing. And in this kind of relationship, I have seen a pattern where the women will often be unsecure attached in some way, and they will have some beliefs about that love is something that you need to work for, or you need to do something for, or you need to be pleasing, or you need not to express your needs or wants or setting boundaries. And that is where a lot of the problems starts in for these kind of women, when then they maybe meet a man who in the beginning seems like now he's giving them all the things that they have been dreaming about. And then actually he starts to manipulate her, or using her most sore points in her sort of development story on a psychological level. So this is also why it is so painful to be in this kind of relationship, because it is very often you repeat a pattern that you know it to some degree. And then in these kind of psychological abusive relationship, it's to an extreme, because it's maybe it has been there to some degree when you were a child, but it was maybe not so extreme. In some cases, it has been. I have been working with people who have been brought up with severe emotional neglect and maybe also physical punishment. So this is why attachment style is so vital to start to know, how am I attached? How do I perceive what love is? To know, okay, I have maybe some beliefs, but maybe they're not true. Maybe it's not true that I'm not good enough. How on earth should we ever sort of find that out? It's a belief. I have had some experiences where I came maybe logically to that conclusion that even my mother or father didn't love me because there was something wrong with me. I was not enough. So the child will sort of internalize the problem and take the responsibility for why is my mother not connecting to me? And then because we can't see, okay, what is my mother doing right now? Oh, she has some really severe problems in connecting to me. We're not able to do that. We can do that later on in therapy, but when we are children, we don't have that ability to sort of look at the relationship from the outside and say, "Hey, mom, what are you doing?"
Yeah, sadly enough, we don't know.
Yeah, we can't. But we can do that later on and start questioning our belief system. Oh, I really have some very strong beliefs here that I'm not lovable. That it's really, if you go into that belief system of not being lovable, well, that's really painful.
Yeah.
So you also very often is very grateful if you are thrown a little crumble of love.
Is there any book, video, or other resource that you would recommend listeners where they can learn even more about the attachment style theory?
Well, actually, Sue Johnson is also working from that perspective.
Okay. Yeah.
And I know she has written several books about this. I don't know else right now, but what I would say that it is vital to start to look on your background history. There is a very fine book about from, I think she's called Gibson, about emotionally immature parents. Mm-hmm. And she's actually describing 4 kinds of different parent style and how they affect you, which is also quite helpful. I'm also in my book using this kind of sort of theory to start to look into yourself, because that's, for me, the whole part of this is that try to understand where am I coming from and how has it affected me, and where do I need to heal, where do I need to grow, where do I need to take responsibility, so I'm making sure that this is not going to happen anymore. And also be, if you want to, open to go into a more healthy relationship, because I really feel that love is what we all is yearning for, and we all yearning for being in this close, deep relationship where we feel secure. I'm also, in my book is like, it's built up like a process book. So you go through different kinds of steps and through different kinds of themes, which I see is very common in these kind of relationships. So it's really a book on going inside yourself and building yourself up again.
Just a quick note before we go on with the interview. For those who are interested, the IPS project also offers a premium membership where you can enjoy over plus 100 articles converted to audio files, so you can listen to them on the go. You will also get access to all the online courses on the IPS Academy, which are high-quality courses taught by experts, many of whom who have also been guests here on the IPS podcast, to improve the quality of your life. Other benefits of the premium membership are exclusive premium content, such as special Q&As with instructors at the IPS Academy and guests who have been on the podcast, where you actively take part by deciding what questions will be asked during the Q&A. You will also receive a 15% discount on any IPS t-shirt, which are t-shirts that change the world, where you get to choose which good cause part of your money will go to. You will also get 15% off any IPS journey, which are mindful travel trips, workshops, and events. As you can see, there is a whole list of premium content that awaits you for the price of $6.99 a month. Finally, besides all this, you will also be supporting the IPS project and help us greatly to continue to bring out new podcast episodes like this one and help us on our mission to keep bringing forward education on life. To get more information about our premium membership, go to innerpicturestories.com/premium or check out the link located in the description of this episode. With that, let us go back now to the interview. So, the last part here of this interview that I wanted to talk with you about, Signe, is about how to start healing psychological abuse. So being able to have loving relationships in your life is, without a question, very important. And like you said, I think it's what everyone kind of, is seeking in life. But as you pointed out in your TEDx talk, some of us had a bad start depending on the early attachment you learned growing up from your parents. Now, I like to ask the following question to put out hope to anyone listening who went through an emotional abusive relationship or is going through one. Is it truly possible, if you had a bad start in life or if you have been in an emotional abusive relationship for many years, to do have loving relationships and secure attachments with others at some point again?
Yeah, I truly believe that. And that's what's so great about the attachment style theory is that it also brings that hope that attachment style can change. You can come from an anxious attachment style and have some new experiences would create a new attachment style, which is more secure. So that is definitely possible. And with that say, I will also say that it will also require some work.
Yeah.
And in a loving and kinding manner, because you need to sort of also be kind to yourself. That is to forgive yourself and also work through all the shame and all the guilt and say, this is true. I was in this relationship and I couldn't say no because there were different kinds of things going on where I couldn't say no, I couldn't move, and I need to forgive myself that happened. And where did I came from? Yeah, I came from love. I wanted love, and I thought that we are loving each other. So I need to be self-compassionate with myself. That is really where I come from. We need to be more compassionate with ourselves, because that is where the healing is, to be able to comfort ourselves. Yes, I went through this. It was horrible. And now I do understand that I have some scars, and I need to look at them and clean them up and maybe put a bandage on for a while and give myself some time and to also be kind. Often you will see a high level of stress and anxiety. So you also need to, we have a nerve system that really needs some time to to calm down. That said, that there is people who will have scars for life. But you can, if you start to, let's say that you have boundary issues, you can work with that. You can. I want to be number one in setting boundaries in a loving and kindful way, because that is possible. You can say, hey, what is going on here? When you said that, I felt like this and that. Could we have a conversation about that? You can ask other people, can we talk about this? And if they're saying no, okay, but then remove yourself from the situation and the person, because why be in a relationship with somebody where they don't respect your boundaries? It is a key issue between people that respect each other's boundaries and treat them with kindness. And sometimes we unfortunately step on each other's boundaries, but sometimes it's not on purpose, and then we apologize. Oh, sorry. That is why sorry is a wonderful word. We are taking responsible. Oh, I didn't knew that. Let me take the responsible. Sorry. That is what is in the action of saying sorry.
I would like to zoom in for a little second on forgiving yourself, because I would imagine that to be very difficult for some people, because they might be very angry that they stayed in an abusive relationship. Do you have any words for someone who might have a hard time forgiving him or herself for staying in an abusive relationship?
Yeah, I would strongly recommend them to read Desmond Tutu's book about forgiveness. And I'm also referring to it in my own book, because when we forgive, it is a gift to ourselves. It's not a gift to the other part. It basically, we don't have to have any communication with them about the forgiveness. It's a forgiveness that we are working on our insides. This is true. I stayed too long, and it has had terrible consequences, maybe on several levels. But I will work on forgiving myself, because we know there's been done a lot of research on working with forgiveness, and we can actually see that if we don't forgive and keep on scorning ourselves or hitting ourselves in the head and having a very strong inner critic, it will affect our health and also our mental health. So this is sort of a very strong gift you can give to yourself. I will work on it. If it's difficult to do it right now, then have the intention. I will work on forgiving myself. I will do it gradually, and I will keep on working on it. But I would strongly recommend Desmond Tutu's book, because it's wonderful, and there is actually a guide in there. It's also a process book, and I think it's been written in such a respectful and kind tone that really, it's very touching, and I would really strongly recommend that, because it is also for me to we have this one life, and we need to live it. It needs to be good. Maybe we have had some experiences which was hard and suffering. That is also a part of living. But I would feel sorry that if it's going to sort of what you call it, put on a definition of our life. We can move on. We can't start living more freely, and maybe there's a lot of learning, and maybe we can come out stronger, and maybe we will be better of spotting the right partner for us, and maybe be more clear in what are my needs. If I need to feel secure and loved in a relationship, what do I need then? What kind of behavior do I need, both from myself, but also from my partner? So to become much more aware of what do I need to be happy? What do I need to feel that life is meaningful? Because that is eventually for me what it's all about. So taking sort of that doing that inner work of, okay, I had some disbeliefs about being able to love or being loved, but I would look at it as sort of, okay, I will look at it more from the outside, and okay, I have these old belief systems, but I would like to make some use. And that's why I, in my book, talk about sort of the old religion or the old tree that we have sort of brought with us from our upbringing and maybe experiences life, but maybe it's time to plant a little new tree. And to what does this tree need to grow,
right,
and to be strong? And so how can I nurture myself? And I really find that forgiveness is a crucial part.
yeah. That's beautifully said. And the book you mentioned will be linked up as well in the show notes for everyone.
Yeah.
I just have two more questions left for you. So, besides being an authorized psychologist, you are also a certified mindfulness instructor from the School of Applied Meditation. Are there any techniques or practices from out of the world of mindfulness that you often recommend to people who come to you for therapy, that you would also recommend any listener here to try, that can help the healing process from emotional abuse?
Definitely, because what I see is that when you practice mindfulness, it is a sort of being more aware and observing of what is going on the inner side, and especially your thought patterns, because we know that thoughts are affecting our emotions and also our actions in life.
Definitely.
So if I do have some repetitive thoughts about myself, or I'm not good enough, we can also, if I on a daily basis are going around talking to myself like this, it will affect my emotions and sort of my actions, as I said before. So what I especially like when working with sort of mindful techniques is it actually can work on two levels. We know that when you are working with mindfulness, it will decrease your anxiety and stress levels, and also depression. So that's one thing. But it will also give you the competence of starting to be aware of your thoughts. Oh, wow. Now my thoughts, they are just going around in a merry-go-round very fast, and they are just thinking about my ex and all the things he have done and all the things he have told me. And I can now feel how hurt I am, how sorry I am, how maybe angry I am, and whatever. But starting to detach from the thoughts, they are just thoughts. They're not necessarily true. So having this more, come into having the ability to be more distance from our thoughts and looking on them from the outside. So you won't sort of jump into that merry-go-round of thoughts patterns. So that is why I use mindfulness. So because it gives you that competence to start to look at how you have some favorite negative thoughts about yourself, and maybe start to having some other thoughts. How could I look at the situation in another way, and in a more just as accurate, but maybe more caring, more compassionate way? And that is why I also is very much inspired by Kirsten Neff and her work about self-awareness, self-compassion, because I really find that is key when you need to move on from this kind of relationship, to start to be much more compassionate towards yourself. A lot of us are quite able to be in compassion towards other people, but when it comes to ourselves, we are totally lost. And the way we are talking to ourselves, we are actually quite harsh and unkind, and we wouldn't talk to other people the way we talk to ourselves. So it's very critical to start noticing that voice, and maybe in a kind manner asking it to shut up or be quiet, or tone it down. Okay, I know that I am, but now I will focus on something else. What am I doing actually right now? So that is also a very easy mindful exercises to see where is my head compared to my body. Okay, I'm doing the dishes right now, but in my head, I am in an argument. I have been arguing 100 times and never get it resolved. So maybe I should just leave that argument and being here with the dishes and really being mindful about that, because it will affect your well-being. So that is where I find that mindfulness is crucial, and there's also a lot of beginners view on that, because there is often a lot of misconceptions about what meditation and mindfulness is. It's not that our mind will become silent. It will never become silent, but to observe it and to, when we come aware that, oh, now I'm in the past or now I'm in the future, it's just in that moment where, now I'm on my, what am I going to do tomorrow? In that moment when you become aware of that, oh, I'm actually not in the present. That is the moment where you can sort of do that practice of come back to, where am I here and now? I'm here now, here. Okay. And then our mind will go along again, because that is what it's a part of being human being. We can't stop that brain. It's developed like this. It has also its advantages, but it also has some disadvantages, especially right now, if you are under pressure. So
yeah. And I guess, like we talked about before the interview, another way to be definitely in the moment is to take a cold ice bath somewhere.
Yeah, definitely. You're very present right there.
Yeah. So the last question that I have for you, Signe, is there any question that you hoped I asked that I didn't ask? Or is there anything else you still like to touch upon? Or do you feel that we covered the topic of emotional abuse, at least to a degree, pretty well?
No, I think we have pretty much come around a lot of things. And it's a big topic.
Yeah, no, it is.
I could talk about this for hours, but I would say that what is so vital for me is to say that you are not alone. You are not alone in this. And when you start talking to other people about your experience, a lot of people will, maybe not as bad as your experience, but they will have maybe some kind of experience that is similar, and sort of the thing that when we speak up about this, we will recognize I am not alone. And that is also quite healing. That it's not just me. Even I have been in this, and I didn't knew it. And then I started to become curious. How did I ended up in this relationship? And there were good reasons, but it's not to take away the guilt or anything, but there is a way out. And that is what is vital for me, that you are not alone. And try to work through the guilt and the shame, because that is often what is holding us back.
With that last question, Signe, I like to thank you so much for doing this interview and for the incredible work you do on this topic, and for spreading some more awareness here on the IPS podcast. Now, there's one final end question that I have for you that I ask all my guests. Mm-hmm. But before I ask that question, Signe, what is the best place for people to find and connect with you? And as well, is there any specific place you'd like to send people to?
For connecting to me?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well,
any social media pages or?
Yeah. I am on Instagram under my surname Hegestand, and people are free to follow me on that page. Mm-hmm. It's not just about psychological abuse; it's also just everyday life. Yeah. But you can also connect with me. I have on Facebook a close group. Right now it's on Danish, but I will develop one in English. Okay. And so people are also welcome in that forum. So they are welcome to do that. It's not up yet, but it will be in the middle of April. Mm-hmm. So they are welcome there. I don't know where else to connect with me.
That's fine. I will put everything up, like your website and your Instagram page, and then the Facebook group that you mentioned.
Yeah, I also have. So I have a closed Facebook group, but I also just have an open Facebook page, and people are also welcome there. But I'm on a transition right now because a lot of it is in Danish, and I also have some a YouTube channel, but it's also in Danish, and I'm sort of thinking about, should I go about doing it in English right now, which it's a big step for me, and but I am thinking about it because I have had some request about it, but so I don't know, but it is out there, so you could start on following that if you're interested.
I will link it up in the show notes though for everyone to find.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, if there's been some requests, then I would say maybe try, because it is definitely a topic where we could use every voice. Yeah, yours is definitely a voice that has a lot of knowledge on this topic. So.
Oh, thank you so very much. But it's been wonderful to having this opportunity to talk to you, and I would also thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. So the final end question that I had for you. And you can take your time on this. You can make it as long or as short as you want. It's kind of what the first thing that comes up for you. But from everything that you've seen, experienced, lived, and learned in your life, what is the one thing you know to be true?
Yeah, that was a good question. I know that we come into this life to connect to other people, and that is vital. And I know that love is crucial, and love can come in many forms and in many kinds of relationship, not just in our love relationship, but also in friends and families and in communities and whatever. But we all need that safe space where we feel secure, and some of us need to develop it ourselves when we grow up, but it is possible, and we are all born good, but some of us have experiences that breaks us or in other way destroys us. But for most of us, I won't say all, but for most of us, we can come back to that source of goodness, of kindness, and trust.
That was beautiful. Thank you. Signe, once again, thank you so much for being here. It has been a true pleasure.
Thank you so very much, and I hope to maybe speak to you again. We never know.
Who knows? I mean, when the borders are open again,
that would be fun.
Yeah, it's not too far from me here to come to Denmark. It's been actually a country that I wanted to explore a lot more when it's possible again.
Yeah, but if you ever come, it would be nice with a cup of coffee.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, so have a nice day.
And there we have it. That concludes our episode with licensed psychologist Signe Hegestand. I hope you enjoyed this interview and gained new insights and lots of information out of it. Again, while this episode covered much ground on the topic of emotional abuse, it is an extremely complex topic that could use a whole book to explain it more fully and more in depth. Therefore, if you'd like to learn more about psychological abuse, or if you have been a victim, or if you are currently in an abusive relationship, definitely check out the book Signe wrote titled Psychological Abuse: How to Move On. I will place a link to the book in the show notes of this episode, so you can easily find it there. Besides her book, any other resources and things mentioned in the episode can also be found in the show notes located in the description of this episode. Of course, you can also go directly to innerpicturestories.com/podcast and search for Signe to find them. And Signe is spelled Signe. With that, thank you for being here and spending time with me and Signe. I hope I can welcome you again soon on another journey, another episode here on the IPS podcast. Until then, this is your host Jelis Vaas, signing off.